So a really worrying time for public sector workers, but a slightly different story in some areas of the private sector, especially in companies in the automotive industry.
But they're facing their own challenges as they struggle to find enough skilled engineers to fill their job vacancies. Joanne Riddle reports.
Specialised work to supply parts for the motor industry requires skilled engineers, and therein lies the problem. There simply aren't enough of them. Doug Squire started this firm nearly 30 years ago. For the last 6 months, he's had vacancies for 3 engineers, and JLR announced yesterday they'll be creating 1,700 jobs.
It certainly keeps us on our toes as employers, because we don't want to lose people to JLR. They've got to get these 1,700 people from somewhere, and each job that's generated in their factory, I understand, will generate 3 others out in the supply chain. So we've got to hang on to what we've got in the way of labour.
The business secretary in Coventry to see production start again at the London Taxi Company acknowledged the issue.
There is a skills problem, and it's a very serious one, and as the economy recovers we need to make absolutely sure that it isn't throttled by the lack of skilled people.
This training company specialises in engineering. The number of apprentices they teach here in Coventry and in Redditch for engineering firms has been rising in recent years to 90 annually.
Bosses here say the shortage of engineers is a national problem, even though a maintenance engineer is paid around £40,000 a year and senior engineers up to £60,000.
The skill shortage is significant and growing, I would say, almost by the month. Not only our industry having a real issue, whether it's the Jaguar Land Rovers of this world or the smaller engineering companies in the Coventry-Warwickshire area, it's also ourselves who's having difficulty in recruiting engineers to train young people and engineers to be upskilled.
You've got the assembly, which some of you have still got on your screen.
Rachel Burns is rare then, not only a woman engineer in an often male world, but now a trainer too.
Finding this job position and getting into it, I have my hands in the engineering environment as well as improving my skills in a different skill set such as teaching.
Drew Maloney decided against university after A-levels, opting for a 4-year engineering apprenticeship.
I think that with this high demand and with employers looking to push and invest in more in engineers, that matches more passion for engineering, so hopefully I can make a better career for myself.
While some engineers may be lured from smaller firms by big players, some in the industry say it could work the opposite way too, with those at major firms moving to manage smaller ones. Joanne Riddle, BBC Midlands Today, Coventry.
Well, joining us now is our business correspondent, Peter Plisner. Let's start with this skills gap. I mean, we have companies wanting to employ people. People are looking for jobs. Surely people can be retrained or young people encouraged down the engineering route?
Well, they certainly can, and lots of people are. But of course, let's explain what the skills gap is. It's where there are lots of older workers, say, within a company, but they're not being replaced by younger people to learn those same skills, and they're leaving, and then you get this skills gap. But more young people are becoming engineers, there's no doubt about that. We're seeing record levels of apprenticeships at the moment, but of course it takes 3 or 4 years to train an apprentice, and you know, that's a time when we're going to have a skills gap. But it's not always attractive to young people either. They prefer not getting their hands dirty, perhaps working on computers instead. But things are improving, but they're improving slowly.
OK, let's look at the unemployment figures now. We still have one of the highest in the country around here, don't we? Is it actually as bad as it seems?
Well, it remains stubbornly high, there's no doubt about it. Looking at today's figures, 9.8% of the population out of work, but it may be levelling off because the official figures suggest that it's rising 7,000 in the last quarter. But of course, this data is gathered by a survey. There is a margin for error. So if you look at the other measure, which is called the claimant count, which is the number of people who are actually claiming job seekers allowance, that fell this month. The fact is, there are jobs being created, but not everyone, as we've heard this evening, is skilled enough to take those jobs.
Now, we've heard about the 1,000 jobs going at Wolverhampton Council. Other local authorities are going to have to make cuts as well. Can the private sector take up that slack?
Well, it can, but obviously we are still seeing lots of jobs lost in the public sector. We only saw yesterday Jaguar Land Rover creating 1,700 jobs. We heard about the 1,400 jobs on the Wolverhampton engine plant. But service sector is growing quite fast, and of course that's a good area where some of these public sector workers could go.
Peter, thanks very much indeed.